Josephine Jackson was 28 years old. She lived in a renovated industrial chic loft in the arts district of downtown Detroit, a city in the midst of a gritty renaissance that mirrored her own journey. The space was filled with her own large-scale, abstract paintings, the scent of turpentine often mixing with the aroma of coffee from the artisan roastery below. Her annual income was a respectable $500,000, a sum earned through a combination of her selective work in front of the camera, her burgeoning career as a painter under her real name, and the ownership of a small, independent gallery that showcased local artists. She was an enigma in the industry, known for a quiet, intense presence and a body that was both powerfully athletic and strikingly voluptuous. But the woman who now found solace in the solitary act of painting was a world away from the girl she had been, a girl whose life was once defined by a single, all-consuming and tragic love. Before she was Josephine Jackson, she was Lena Petrova, the only child of Ukrainian immigrants who ran a struggling auto repair shop in Hamtramck, a gritty enclave of Detroit. Her childhood was filled with the smell of grease and the sound of Slavic folk music. She was a quiet, observant girl, but her body told a different, louder story. By 16, she had the physique of a classical statue, tall and strong, with broad shoulders, a shockingly narrow waist that emphasized the dramatic curve of her hips, and long, powerful legs. Her most defining features, however, were her piercing, ice-blue eyes, which held a solemn depth, and the magnificent, heavy, and completely natural fullness of her breasts. They were a source of immense pride for her mother, who saw in them a symbol of robust health, but for Lena, they felt like a costume she hadn't chosen. Her escape was art. She poured her quiet intensity onto canvases, creating dark, emotional works that belied her age. It was at a citywide high school art exhibition that she met him. His name was Mateo, a scholarship student from Chile whose paintings were explosions of vibrant color and light. Where her work was a stormy sea, his was a relentless sun. He saw her painting, a somber self-portrait, and didn't see the body everyone else fixated on. He saw the soul behind the ice-blue eyes. "You paint like you're carrying the weight of your ancestors," he said, his voice soft with an accent that made her heart stutter. He was the first person to look at her and see her. Their love affair was the stuff of teenage legend. It was intense, poetic, and all-consuming. They were opposites in every way. Her quiet stability grounding his fiery passion, his boundless optimism pulling her out of her shell. They spent every free moment together, painting in his sun-drenched attic studio, talking for hours about escaping Detroit for New York, about opening a gallery together, about a future woven from canvas and dreams. He called her his Nyasna, his princess. He was her first everything, first love, first kiss, first true friend. For 2 years, she lived inside a beautiful, perfect bubble, convinced she had found her destiny. The bubble burst on a rain-slicked interstate. Driving back from a camping trip, their beat-up pickup truck hydroplaned. Mateo, trying to control the skid, overcorrected. The truck flipped. Lena woke up in the hospital with a broken arm and a face bruised beyond recognition. Mateo didn't wake up at all. The world, once so full of color and promise, shattered into a monochrome nightmare of grief. The vibrant boy who had filled her with light was gone, and the darkness that rushed in to take his place was absolute. She stopped painting. The colors felt like a betrayal. She dropped out of her community college art classes. The future they had planned was a ghost that haunted her every waking moment. Desperate for any feeling other than the crushing grief, she fell in with a bad crowd. She started waitressing at a seedy strip club on 8 Mile, the only place where the numbness would temporarily recede under the glare of the lights and the roar of the music. Her body, once celebrated by Mateo as a work of art, became a tool for paying rent. It was there she was discovered by a touring adult film producer. He was slick, offering her a way out of Detroit, a way to monetize her grief and her stunning physique on a national scale. "With a body like that and a face like yours, you could be a star," he told her. "You can always come back to Detroit. But first, get paid." Standing in the dressing room of the club, surrounded by the ghosts of her past, she made a decision. Detroit was a cemetery of her dreams. She had to leave or she would die there, suffocated by grief. She chose a name that sounded strong and unbreakable, Josephine Jackson. It was a name with no history, no memories attached. Her first professional shoot in Los Angeles was a surreal, out-of-body experience. She performed the acts with a detached, almost clinical precision, her mind 1,000 miles away, in a dusty attic studio filled with sunlight and the smell of oil paint. The director praised her intensity. He had no idea he was filming a walking ghost. The paycheck, for $5,000, felt like blood money, a payment for the piece of her soul she had just sold. But it was also a ticket, a confirmation that she had, in fact, escaped. The first part of her journey was a tragic love story and a desperate flight from grief. The second would be a long, arduous journey back to herself, and the rediscovery that her body could be a temple, not just a tombstone. Josephine Jackson's entry into the adult film industry was marked by a profound and unsettling stillness. While other performers brought bubbly energy or aggressive passion, Josephine brought a quiet, smoldering intensity that was both captivating and unnerving. Directors fought to work with her because the camera was mesmerized by her ice-blue eyes, which seemed to hold a universe of pain and secrets. Her performances were not joyful, they were raw and emotionally charged, a quality that set her apart in an industry often criticized for its artifice. Her powerful, athletic body and dramatic, natural curves became her trademark, but she was always, unmistakably, detached. 4 years, she lived a dual existence. In Los Angeles, she was Josephine, the successful, in-demand performer. She bought a sterile, modern apartment in the valley, a place with no memories, no personality. She worked constantly, amassing a small fortune, building a brand on a foundation of sorrow. She sent money home to her parents, who believed she was a successful commercial model in California. The lie was a necessary shield, another layer of separation between Lena Petrova and the woman she had become. But the grief she had tried to outrun followed her to the West Coast. It manifested in a deep, persistent loneliness. The men she met in the industry were transient. The friendships with other performers often felt superficial, built on shared professional circumstances rather than genuine connection. She started painting again, late at night in her empty apartment. But the colors were still gone. Her canvases were dark, chaotic splatters of black, gray, and deep blue, visual screams of the pain she couldn't articulate. She was successful, wealthy, and utterly lost. The turning point came during a shoot for a high-concept, cinematic film. The set was designed to look like an artist's loft. The props included canvases and pots of paint. As she moved through the scene, her hand brushed against a tube of cadmium red. The sensation, the smell, was a lightning bolt to her system. It was the exact brand Mateo had always used. A memory, so vivid it was paralyzing, flooded her. Mateo's laugh, the feel of his hand guiding hers on a canvas, the way he would whisper, "More color, Nyasna. The world needs your light." She froze on set. The director, thinking she was in character, let the cameras roll, capturing the raw, unfiltered emotion that washed over her face. The grief, the longing, the love that had never died. When the scene ended, she fled to her dressing room and sobbed, great, heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing her apart. It was her rock bottom. She realized she hadn't escaped her grief by becoming Josephine Jackson. She had simply given it a new name and a more expensive cage. She decided to go home. Not to her parents' house, but to Detroit. She used her earnings to buy the loft in the developing arts district. It was a defiant act, a decision to face the ghosts she had run from. The first few months were agonizing. Every corner of the city held a memory. But instead of running, she began to paint them. She painted the auto shop, the attic studio, the curve of the river where they had picnicked. At first, the paintings were still dark, elegiac. But slowly, as she allowed herself to feel the pain instead of numbing it, the colors began to return. A streak of yellow, a splash of orange, Mateo's colors, bleeding back into her world. She started her gallery, not as a tribute to herself, but as a beacon for other struggling artists in the city, a place for those whose voices were often unheard. She began to work in the adult industry again, but on her own terms, flying to LA for a handful of selective projects a year that she felt were artistically valid. She had reclaimed her power, not by rejecting Josephine, but by integrating her with Lena. Now, at 28, Josephine Jackson is a woman at peace with her contradictions. The ice-blue eyes that once held only grief now hold a complex mixture of sorrow, wisdom, and hard-won contentment. Her body, once a vessel for her pain, is now a source of strength she uses in her daily yoga practice and a canvas she celebrates. She still talks to Mateo sometimes, while she paints, telling him about her gallery, about the city he loved that is slowly coming back to life. Her story is not one of a fall from grace, but of a long, circular journey back to the self. She learned that you cannot outrun your past, but you can turn your grief into a different kind of masterpiece. She had to lose everything, including herself, to discover that the most powerful art she could ever create was her own, fully integrated and authentically lived life.